Tottenham Hotspur, who are at Manchester United. Manchester United is 5th at 47 points. Tottenham is 7th at 45 points. This game is 12:30 p.m. on Saturday. United is plus 115. The draw is plus 250. The Spurs are plus 245. United minus half a goal stays at plus 115. And then the Spurs, to get at least 1 point out of it, move to minus 130. So the Spurs obviously continued their up and down form with a giant up performance against relegation-bound Everton on Monday in a 5-0 drubbing. You texted me afterwards that Frank Lampard might not be the championship manager of the year next year because he might not make it to the end of this season. You still feeling really bad about your boy?
I mean, technically he's your boy. But no, I mean, it was brutal last week. I think, it's one of those things where when you have a team like Everton that's clearly sliding and you have an up and down team like Spurs, you always kind of gravitate towards Everton were really bad. And they were, like, don't get me wrong, there were. And Donny van de Beek, there was clearly a reason he was not playing at Manchester United. But Spurs were also like really good. Like we're starting to see that front three with Kulusevski now joining Son and Kane, they're exciting. Like it's a really exciting attacking trio. We're getting back to last year's Harry Kane, where it was goals and assists, playing beautiful balls through, breaking Son in behind the defense. We've kind of talked about how Son, in a lot of ways, he's not necessarily getting to quote unquote wash status, but he's becoming more of a poacher, the guy that's running in the furthest attacking player ahead. And it really fucked Everton up last week. And I also think that when you watch last week's game for United, and we saw City completely overload that left side, like Aaron Wan-Bissaka's side, the right side of the United defense, and they tore them apart. They combined on the left side, and then it was De Bruyne sitting alone, one-on-one with the great Harry Maguire, coming on at the end of a ball and just putting it in the back of the net. And that left side is where Son is going to be this upcoming weekend. So even though United are favored, I'm going with your boy Conte. I'm money lining the Spurs. I think that attacking trio, I just think that I think this is a stupid analysis, and we might talk about this a little bit because I know you and I have opinions on Bruno Fernandes. I just think Spurs have better players at this point. Like, I mean, do you?
Well, I saw a lot of what you saw in the United game last week. They continue to struggle against big opponents. They got run off the pitch 4-1 against City, and it really wasn't even that close. And Bruno Fernandes, he keeps finding himself under the microscope because it's another poor performance. And so I think first of all, I'm taking the Spurs minus 130 to get at least a point. So you're one step beyond me and taking them at plus 245, but both of us are on the same page that we would not take United in this game because the Spurs, I think, are equally matched and on better form, and they certainly have the managerial advantage. So I like that as the bet. But I do, as you mentioned, want to talk a little bit more about Fernandes. It's not that United's without talent. Like, whenever the odds shift too far the other way, I always take United and point out just how talented they are. And if it gets close to a coin flip, I always think their talent's going to win. But Fernandes, he was a revelation for them when he was acquired midseason 2 years ago. He's been one of their best players ever since, but he's struggling so heavy right now. And like last time we started talking about a star and called him somewhat washed, then Son came out firing goal after goal to prove us wrong.
That's just like a thing for me, though. I shit on somebody and then they immediately have the best performances of career. So anytime I trash talk somebody, just be prepared to bet for them to do good things.
Well, let's do Cousin Sal and his beloved Manchester United a favor here. Let's talk about Fernandes and let's talk about form. Let me set you up. Okay. For a guy like Fernandes at a top 6 club, like if you have a star at a bottom of the table team, you're never benching them because you have no alternative to them even on their worst day. But the thing that makes top 6 teams so powerful is the depth and quality and competition for positions. And so even a guy who's been a bright shining light for you for 2 years, when he's on this bad of form, how much rope do they get at a top 6 club in your opinion?
It's tough because I think what we saw a lot of last year with Bruno, it's one of those things where penalties fuck up our perception of a player's success, I think, a lot, right? And so when you look with Fernandes last year, like he had 18 goals, he had 12 assists, but of those 18 goals, 9 of them were pens. So we've seen that get stripped away, right? Because there's a bigger star, right? Like they're at a big club. You're talking about big club star players, all that kind of shit. Like then Ronaldo comes and he's taking pens and he's taking that sorts of goals. And I think part of the reason why, in my opinion, some of the glossy veneer around Fernandes has been stripped away this year with United is like he's just not as scoring as many goals. You don't look at the raw numbers. And people, I think our human beings' brains are weird, right? Like we see the gaudy go numbers, 30 goal involvements last year. And we're like, oh, this guy's a star. Like he's clearly built for Manchester United. But in all reality, I don't think he's the guy that's above being rotated out at this point, especially depending on the match, especially depending on the opponent. And a big reason that I kind of look at that is I've heard this before, and I'm probably stealing somebody else's thought. I'd be curious to get your take on it, like maybe a cross-sport comparison somewhere. But Fernandes, to me, is not a ceiling raiser. He's a floor raiser. He's a team that makes like an average team good. He's not a player that makes a good team great, in my opinion. And a lot of it is because of the way that he plays. Like he hits a bunch of home run balls. He mostly acts as like a second striker, not really like a link-up guy that like receives passes in dangerous areas or makes a ton where he's moving the ball like forward a ton. Especially with dribbling at his feet. It's mostly like he's just playing these long passes. And that to me is not like how a good team, like we see really good teams play. Chelsea is up there on their good days, City and Liverpool. Those teams dominate possession. They don't give the ball away cheaply. They have players that are super creative at creating chances. And they mostly maximize and tilt the field. And Fernandes is not really like a guy that does that, which is why I don't think he's like above reproach at this point. And I don't know if you could think of a cross-sport comparison, but there are lots of players that exist. I know in basketball, we talk about this all the time, that they raise the floor, but then once a team gets to a certain point, they kind of become a liability. And I kind of feel like that's where we're at with United in this chase for fourth.
Yeah, and like a really high profile, you'd be talking about like a game managing quarterback, like historically like a Flacco or a Trent Differ that won you a Super Bowl, or like a Ryan Tannehill in today's game that Derrick Henry is going to be the driver of your offense, but Tannehill's, enough to gives you competent enough play to keep defenses honest and, raises your floor, as you said. I think basketball probably has the better comparison for what you're saying. Like the guy who could be the third best player on a championship team and not the star of a championship team. I mean, I actually love him, so I don't want to diminish him. The guy who comes to mind is like Chris Middleton on last year's Bucks. Like if Middleton's your best guy, you're not winning the championship. But when you got Drew Holiday playing the way he was, and Giannis playing the way he was, and Middleton playing the way he was, then that becomes a championship team and takes them from good to great. So it's somebody in that vein, like the third banana on a championship team that raises your floor, or could like make you to the playoffs if he was your best player, but definitely is not winning you a title.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that United really has to look hard at right now. Especially the Pogba's contract situation, especially because they have Sancho and Rashford and some younger talent that's coming up. They have to make decisions on Ronaldo. They're going to have some money to spend in the transfer market. If Bruno is kind of a vacuum in terms of like he needs to do certain things, but those things that he does well don't always fit a team taking a leap, you have to really reassess maybe not necessarily how much he plays, but like where you play him, what you ask him to do, how you build a team around him. Like he's just not a guy that like a De Bruyne where you just throw him out there and he just does good shit all the time. Yeah. It doesn't matter the system. It doesn't matter the team. It doesn't matter where they're at. Like De Bruyne is a great player. You put him in any system, you can put him in a lot of roles, and he's going to help your club win, and you can build around him. And I think what we're seeing this year, especially like I said, with that kind of like rose-colored thing of he scored so many goals last year that were propped up by penalties, which, as we talk about all the time, penalties are very fluky. There's no direct correlation with like players being really good at them. Like you can maybe make a case that Jamie Vardy like is the type of guy that's really good at like just drawing penalties, but for the most part, they're random. So a lot of Fernandez's goal generation last year was random. Like it was just, he was the guy that was the penalty taker. If they would have made Rashford the penalty taker, who knows, right? Like maybe he has 30 goal involvements last year, right? And we're looking at Rashford totally different right now than we are currently. So I don't know. He's an intriguing player. I don't think he's like a bad player. but I do wonder where a player like him fits on a top 4 side. Like that's what I see. And with the going against Spurs, Kane, Son, Kulusevski, there's a clear dynamic of what those guys do and how they piece together, and that's why I think they're generally a better team and they fit together well. And with Fernandes and United, you just don't have that same feeling, in my opinion.
Yeah, let me clean up one thing real quick, because I do think Middleton's a great player. Not that anybody's judging me on a soccer podcast on my NBA takes. But I think actually what we're talking more is a little bit like Brad Beal, like on my Wizards team, who, he can get you in the play-in game, but if he was on Philly right now and he was a third best player, they could be title contenders. So it would be mean to compare Fernandes to Westbrook, because I don't think he's as washed as Westbrook, who needs to be on the bench right now for the Lakers. I won't be that mean. All right, so let's talk about our props, and his name's come out of your mouth a couple of times. Just watching the Spurs, I just continue to be enamored with Kulusevski. Kulusevski. I think I got it right the second time. Or at least closer.
Yeah. I mean, or we're both getting it wrong. Either we're both getting it right or we're both getting it wrong. There's no gray area at this point.
So Manchester United is really not showing much defensive organization right now, and they never will as long as Harry Maguire continues to be in the back. I mean, he's one of my least favorite players in the entire league for a reason. And Kulusevski, he just keeps finding himself in dangerous spaces. And without the strong organization, those spaces are going to be abundant, and he's going to be able to slip into them. So I love him to get at least one shot on target on the match on Saturday, and you're only paying minus 130 for that. So whether it goes in or not is almost immaterial. I think he's going to find the space. I think he's going to cut inside, or he's going to play a nice 1-2 with either Kane or Son, and he's going to get one on frame, and that bet's going to cash.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go with the opposite side. I'm going to take the Spurs winger on the other side. We talked a little bit about Son, who is now basically Spurs' most advanced attacker. And I think with the way the United have been a little more aggressive pressing, with your boy Harry Maguire, who is not good in space, and which is the fact that they struggle.
Where is he good? Where is he good? Tell me where he's good. I'll wait for the answer offline.
He's tall. But yeah, I mean, I think in general, we kind of saw City completely pick apart United's right side of their defense last week, and I don't see how that's going to stop. So I don't think it's great value, but I think Spurs are going to score. And I think in open play, Son is the most likely player to score. So at plus 185, I think, like I said, it's not great value, but I think that's like the best goal scoring prop out there. And I love the goal scoring props, so I'm going with that.
Yeah, well, in a similar vein, another player who's really shining in Conte's system right now recently is Matt Doherty, and he's plus 185 to get a shot on target. So if you want to play, you want to play out on the width and get a little bit more of an odds than Kulusevski's getting, I think Doherty's an excellent bet to get one on target and cash that ticket as well.
Love it.